Picture this: a scorching desert stretching endlessly under a relentless sun, where rain is a rare visitor and survival seems impossible. Yet, against all odds, ancient civilizations not only survived here, they thrived, building bustling cities and vibrant cultures in the harshest environments on Earth. Their secret: an extraordinary mastery of water, achieved without pumps, pipes, or any of the technology we rely on today. These societies turned barren sands into oases, crafting ingenious systems to capture, channel, and conserve every precious drop. And the most astonishing part, many of these ancient solutions are still in use, proving that their brilliance transcends time. What if I told you that some of the most advanced water engineering in history didn't come from the modern era, but from civilizations thousands of years ago? Take the Qanats of Persia, for example, miles of underground tunnels that tapped into mountain springs, delivering water across deserts with nothing but gravity and careful calculation. Or consider the fog nets of the Atacama Desert, where ancient people wove intricate meshes to catch moisture from the air, turning mist into life-giving water. These weren't just feats of survival, they were acts of genius, born from a deep understanding of nature's rhythms and an unshakable determination to adapt. Today, as we face growing water shortages and climate challenges, these ancient innovations offer more than just history. They hold clues for our future. How did desert civilizations engineer water without modern tools? The answers are as surprising as they are inspiring, revealing a legacy of creativity and resilience that still echoes today. So join me on a journey back in time, where we'll unravel the secrets of these forgotten masters and discover how their wisdom might just help us build a more sustainable world. This is the story of humanity's oldest and perhaps most vital engineering triumph. Water wasn't just a necessity for desert civilizations. It was the very heartbeat of their societies, shaping everything from where they built their cities to how they worshipped their gods. In places where a single drought could mean disaster, mastering water wasn't just about survival, it was about power, prosperity, and permanence. Take the Nabateans, for instance, who carved the breathtaking city of Petra into rose-red cliffs. At first glance, this desert fortress seems impossible, a mirage of stone in a sea of sand. But hidden beneath its grandeur lay an intricate network of cisterns, channels, and dams, all designed to capture and store every fleeting drop of rainwater. For them, water wasn't just a resource, it was a source of pride, a testament to their ability to bend nature to their will. Then there's ancient Egypt, a civilization often synonymous with the Nile, but whose ingenuity extended far beyond the river's banks. In the arid western deserts, Egyptians dug deep wells and built sprawling oasis farms, turning barren land into lush gardens. They even used a system of nilometers, stone markers along the river, to predict floods and plan their harvests with almost scientific precision. Water wasn't just practical for them, it was sacred, woven into their myths, their art, and their very identity. But perhaps the most striking thing about these civilizations isn't just what they achieved, it's how they did it. Without blueprints, without modern tools, they engineered solutions so effective that some are still in use thousands of years later. Their methods weren't just clever, they were born from a profound understanding of the land, a patience to observe, and a willingness to innovate. And nowhere is this more evident than in the Kanat system, a masterpiece of ancient engineering that turned the impossible into the everyday. Deep beneath the sun-baked earth of ancient Persia, an engineering marvel lay hidden, one so effective it transformed barren deserts into thriving centers of civilization. The Kanat system wasn't just a series of tunnels, it was a lifeline, a masterpiece of precision and patience. Picture teams of workers digging by hand, carving gentle slopes through rock and soil, ensuring water would flow effortlessly from mountain springs to arid valleys below. Every detail mattered: the angle of descent, the spacing of vertical shafts for maintenance, even the way the tunnels were lined to prevent collapse. This wasn't just digging, it was artistry with a purpose. What made the Kanat truly revolutionary was its simplicity. Unlike modern systems that rely on pumps or power, these channels worked silently, guided only by gravity. A single Kanat could stretch for dozens of miles, its water cool and clean as it emerged into open canals, feeding orchards, filling baths, and sustaining entire cities. Places like Yazd, nestled in Iran's central desert, became lush oases not by fighting nature but by working with it. The Persians understood something profound. Water doesn't always need to be forced, it can be coaxed, guided, and honored. But the brilliance of the Kanat didn't stop at Persia's borders. This idea traveled, carried by traders and conquerors, inspiring similar systems from Morocco to China. Even Rome, with its famed aqueducts, borrowed elements of the design. Yet perhaps the most astonishing legacy of the Kanat is how it endures. In some remote villages, these ancient tunnels still function today, their water as vital now as it was 3,000 years ago. That's more than durability, it's a testament to foresight, a reminder that the best solutions aren't just clever but timeless. Now, shift your gaze to the Arabian Peninsula, where another ancient water miracle took root. Here, in lands even more unforgiving, people devised the Afflage, a network of channels so finely tuned they seemed to defy the desert itself. Like the Kanat, the Afflage relied on gravity, but with a twist. These systems were communal, governed by strict rules to ensure fair sharing of every drop. Water wasn't just a resource, it was a responsibility, a sacred trust passed down through generations. The Afflage didn't just quench thirst, they wove communities together, turning survival into cooperation and scarcity into abundance. While the Qanat system revolutionized water distribution in Persia, halfway across the Arabian Peninsula, the people of Oman perfected their own masterpiece, the Afflage. Imagine a landscape of jagged mountains and bone-dry valleys where summer temperatures could scorch the earth. Yet in this unforgiving terrain, villages flourished, their date palms heavy with fruit, their fields vibrant with crops. The secret lay in a network of meticulously crafted channels that turned scarcity into abundance. But the Afflage weren't just feats of engineering, they were feats of fairness. Unlike top-down systems where water flowed by power or privilege, the Afflage operated on principles of shared responsibility. Each community member received a timed share of water, measured by the shadows cast by ancient sundials or the steady drip of clay jars. The system was so precise, so equitable, that disputes where rare water wasn't hoarded or wasted, but respected as a common good. What's truly remarkable is how these channels mirrored the land itself. The Afflage's builders didn't fight the natural slope of the terrain. They followed it, guiding water from mountain springs through stone-lined tunnels that minimized evaporation. Some ran for miles underground, emerging just where they were needed most. And like the Kanats, their legacy endures. In villages like Al-Hamra, Afflage still feed orchards and homes today, their flow uninterrupted for over 2,000 years. But perhaps their greatest lesson isn't in stone or water. It's in the idea that survival in harsh places demands more than ingenuity, it demands trust. The Afflage didn't just quench thirst, they wove communities together. proving that sustainability isn't just about technology, but about people. Now, journey east to the arid plains of India, where another water marvel rose from the dust, the Stepwells. These weren't just reservoirs, they were subterranean cathedrals, carved deep into the earth with staircases that spiraled down to the water's edge. In a land where monsoons brought torrents followed by months of drought, Stepwells did more than store water. They transformed fetching it into a social ritual. Women gathering at dawn, their laughter echoing off ornate pillars, travelers resting in the cool depths during scorching afternoons. The Stepwell was a sanctuary, a meeting place, a testament to the idea that even the most practical solutions could be beautiful. And like the Afflage, they remind us that the ancients didn't just solve problems, they elevated them into art. Beneath the blistering sun of Rajasthan, where the earth cracks under relentless heat, ancient engineers carved miracles into the ground stepwells that plunged stories deep, marrying function with breathtaking artistry. Chand Baori, one of the largest, descends over 13 levels, its 3,500 symmetrical steps forming a mesmerizing geometric pattern that seems to pull the eye downward like water itself. But these weren't just reservoirs, they were subterranean palaces where the practical and the sacred intertwined. As water levels rose and fell with the seasons, the steps ensured access remained constant, a clever solution to nature's unpredictability. Yet what's truly striking is how these spaces transcended their purpose. Villagers gathered on shaded landings to escape the midday sun. Traders bartered goods along the cool lower tiers, and pilgrims paused to admire intricate carvings of deities woven into the walls. The stepwell was a living tapestry of community, proving that even in the harshest environments, humans crave beauty as much as survival. The architects of these wells understood something profound. Water isn't just a physical necessity, it's a cultural touchstone. In a land where monsoons could vanish for years, stepwells became symbols of hope, their depths a promise that life would persist. Some were adorned with pavilions and prayer niches, turning the act of drawing water into a ritual. Others, like Rani Kai Vav in Gujarat, were designed as inverted temples, their walls lined with hundreds of sculptures celebrating fertility, divinity, and the cycles of nature. Every detail, from the orientation of the stairs to the placement of reliefs, reflected a harmony between human need and artistic expression. But perhaps the most ingenious feature of stepwells was their passive cooling system. As air descended into the depths, it chilled against the water's surface, then rose back up to relieve the oppressive heat above, an early form of air conditioning crafted from stone and intuition. This wasn't just engineering, it was poetry in motion, a dialogue between earth and sky. Today, many stepwells lie forgotten, their echoes silenced by modern pipelines. Yet a handful, like Chand Baori, still stand as reminders of an era when infrastructure wasn't merely functional, but soulful. Now, let's turn to a desert kingdom where water wasn't just managed, it was weaponized. The Nabateans of Petra didn't merely survive their rocky wilderness, they mastered it, channeling flash floods through a labyrinth of cisterns and dams to carve an empire from sandstone. Their secret lay not in fighting the desert's fury, but in harnessing its rare bursts of abundance. The Nabateans didn't just survive the unforgiving deserts of southern Jordan, they bent the landscape itself to their will, turning Petra into a dazzling oasis of trade and culture. Hidden within those iconic rose-red cliffs lay a hydraulic network so precise, it could capture and store every fleeting drop of water that dared to fall in this arid land. Imagine monsoon rain suddenly exploding over the desert, sending torrents of water crashing through narrow canyons. Instead of fearing these floods, the Nabateans celebrated them, channeling the chaos into a symphony of dams, cisterns, and carved channels. Their reservoirs could hold millions of gallons, enough to sustain tens of thousands of people and their thriving caravan trade. What set Petra apart wasn't just the scale of its water systems, it was their elegance. The Nabateans carved channels directly into cliff faces, guiding water downhill without a single pump or pipe. They lined their cisterns with waterproof plaster so effective that some still hold water today, 2,000 years later. Even their famous treasury building, with its ornate facade, secretly functioned as part of this hydraulic network, its hidden channels diverting rainwater to underground chambers. This wasn't just engineering, it was alchemy, transforming the desert's rage into life. But the true genius of Petra's system lay in its adaptability. The Nabateans didn't rely on predictable rivers or steady rainfall, they prepared for extremes. When droughts stretched for years, their reservoirs kept the city alive. When flash floods threatened to destroy, their dams and spillways redirected the fury. In a land where water was both rare and destructive, they mastered the balance, proving that even the most volatile environments could be harnessed with enough ingenuity. Now cross the globe to the arid plains of Peru, where the Nazca people faced an even greater challenge, a desert so dry, some areas see rain just once a decade. Yet here, amid endless sand, they cultivated lush fields, feeding a civilization that left behind the mysterious Nazca lines. Their secret, a web of underground aqueducts called puquios, spiral-shaped wells that tapped into hidden groundwater with astonishing precision. Unlike Petra's grand cisterns, the Nazca solution was invisible, a silent network beneath the sand, but no less revolutionary. Where the Nabateans tamed floods, the Nazca conjured water from nothingness, proving once again that human creativity thrives where nature seems most indifferent. In the bone-dry expanse of Peru's Nazca Desert, where rain might visit only once in a decade, an ancient people performed what seemed like magic. They made water appear from nothing. The Nazca didn't just endure their brutal environment. They rewrote its rules with the puquios, spiral-shaped wells that reached deep into the earth to coax groundwater to the surface. Picture stone-lined tunnels descending in graceful corkscrews, their walls cool to the touch even under the desert sun. These weren't just holes in the ground, they were precise instruments, angled to pull moisture from hidden aquifers and channel it through underground canals to fields of cotton, corn, and squash. What's astonishing isn't just that they built them, but that they knew exactly where to dig in a landscape that gave no visible clues. The real mystery. We still don't fully understand how the Nazca engineered the puquios without modern surveying tools. Some scholars believe they tracked faint cracks in the earth or followed the paths of long-vanished rivers. Others suggest they listened for echoes in hollows, using sound like a prehistoric sonar. Whatever their method, the results were flawless entire networks of these wells-fed sprawling farmlands, turning one of Earth's driest places into a breadbasket. And unlike many ancient systems abandoned to time, dozens of puquios still function today, their water as clear and cold as it was 1,500 years ago. That's not just durability, it's a dialogue between humans and the land, a conversation that outlasts empires. But the puquios reveal something deeper about the Nazca. These wells weren't solitary projects, they were communal lifelines maintained by generations who understood that survival meant cooperation. Without a written language, they passed down the secrets of repair and care through oral tradition, treating water not as a possession, but as a shared inheritance. It's no coincidence that their famous geoglyphs, the Nazca lines, often point toward water sources. For them, the sacred and the practical were inseparable, a reminder that in the desert, every drop is a miracle. Now shift your gaze across the Atlantic to the Sahara, where another civilization faced an even greater challenge, moving water across thousands of miles of sand. The Garamontes, a forgotten kingdom of Libya, didn't just find water, they chased it, tunneling beneath the dunes to create an underground highway for caravans. Their foggara system, much like the Qanats of Persia, tapped into ancient aquifers, but with a twist. These channels snaked through some of the most desolate terrain on Earth, enabling trade routes that connected sub-Saharan Africa to the Mediterranean. Where the Nazca coaxed water from stillness, the Garamontes pursued it like hunters, proving that even the most relentless deserts could be tamed by patience and persistence. Beneath the shifting sands of the Sahara, where the horizon shimmers with heat and water seems like a mirage, the Tuareg and other desert tribes engineered a hidden marvel, the foggara. These underground channels, cousins to Persia's Kanats, snaked silently through the earth, defying the desert's cruelty. But here's what set them apart. While Kanats tapped mountain springs, foggaras hunted far scarcer prey, ancient groundwater buried deep beneath the dunes. Teams of diggers carved tunnels that stretched for miles, their walls reinforced with palm wood to prevent collapse, their slopes calculated with nothing but intuition and generations of hard-won knowledge. Each vertical shaft, spaced like clockwork, served as both air vent and maintenance route, a testament to planning so precise it feels almost mathematical. The foggaras didn't just quench thirst, they fueled empires. Along the Garamontes trade routes, these hidden waterways turned isolated oases into bustling hubs where gold, salt, and ivory changed hands. Picture caravans of camels pausing at settlements like Gadames, where foggara-fed gardens burst with figs and dates under the blistering sun. Water here wasn't just survival, it was currency, power, the invisible thread stitching together a network that stretched from sub-Saharan Africa to the Mediterranean coast. And like the Afflage of Oman, foggaras were governed by strict codes. Tribes shared rights to their life-giving flow, proving that even in the world's harshest desert, cooperation trumped competition. Yet the true brilliance of the foggara lies in its fragility. Unlike stone aqueducts or stepwells, these tunnels were ephemeral, constantly battling the Sahara's shifting sands. Maintenance was a ritual passed down through families, with elders teaching youngsters how to clear blockages or reinforce walls. When a foggara failed, entire communities might abandon their homes, a stark reminder that in the desert, water was never truly conquered, only borrowed. Today, many foggaras lie silent, buried by time and modern pumps. But in places like Algeria's Timmerman, a handful still whisper with water, their tunnels echoing the voices of those who dug them centuries ago. Now, journey from the Sahara's hidden veins to the Nile's mighty pulse, where ancient Egyptians turned a river's tantrums into their greatest ally. While desert tribes chased groundwater, Egypt's engineers performed a different kind of magic. They didn't just find water, they tamed it, transforming the Nile's chaotic floods into a clockwork rhythm of fertility. Their tools, not pumps or pipes, but observation, patience, and a reverence for nature's patterns so deep it bordered on prophecy. While desert civilizations chased scarce water sources or tamed flash floods, the Egyptians faced a different challenge, harnessing the mighty Nile's unpredictable moods. Each summer, the river would swell with monsoon rains from distant highlands, bursting its banks and swallowing the land in a churning brown torrent. To weaker societies, this might have been a disaster, but the Egyptians saw opportunity in the chaos. Their genius wasn't in fighting the flood, it was in dancing with it, using a system so elegantly simple we still marvel at it today: basin irrigation. Picture a vast chessboard of earthen walls, some as tall as a person, crisscrossing the floodplain. When the Nile surged, these barriers trapped the water in shallow pools the size of neighborhoods, holding it captive just long enough to work its magic. As the river receded, it left behind more than just moisture. It deposited a layer of rich black silt, nature's perfect fertilizer, packed with minerals washed down from mountains 1,000 miles away. Farmers then drained the basins at precisely the right moment, leaving fields so fertile they could grow 3 crops a year without modern plows or pesticides. This wasn't just farming, it was alchemy, turning water and mud into golden wheat, plump grapes, and the flax that clothed empires. What's astonishing is how little the system required. No pumps, no moving parts, just carefully placed mud walls and an intimate understanding of the land's natural slope. Villagers coordinated the clearing of feeder canals, timing their work to the river's rhythms like musicians in a grand orchestra. Even their calendar revolved around the flood, dividing the year into Akhit inundation, Perat growth, and Shemu harvest. The Nile wasn't just a river to them, it was a living clock, and Basin irrigation was how they kept perfect time. But the true testament to this system's brilliance, its endurance. For over 5,000 years, from the first pharaohs to the Roman occupation, Basin irrigation fed millions, built pyramids, and sustained a civilization that outlasted most in history. Only in the 19th century, with the construction of modern dams, did the ancient cycle finally break. Yet even now, in remote stretches of Upper Egypt, farmers still use variations of this method, a living legacy of one of humanity's oldest agricultural revolutions. Now shift your gaze northwest to the sun-baked island of Crete, where an entirely different water mystery unfolds. Here, the Minoans didn't rely on annual floods. They engineered a subterranean network so advanced it feels almost modern. Beneath the palace of Knossos, terracotta pipes snaked through walls, their carefully tapered joints preventing leaks centuries before Rome's aqueducts. These weren't crude channels, but precision-crafted conduits that carried fresh water to baths, fountains, and even flush toilets, luxuries Europe wouldn't see again for millennia. The Minoans didn't just manage water, they celebrated it, turning necessity into artistry, and their secrets, like so many ancient wonders, were buried by time until now. Beneath the sun-bleached ruins of Knossos, hidden in the shadows of crumbling palace walls, lies one of history's most overlooked water marvels, the Minoan terracotta pipes. These weren't just simple clay tubes, they were masterpieces of hydraulic engineering, precision crafted to fit together like pieces of an ancient puzzle. Each segment tapered slightly, creating a snug, leak-proof seal that channeled water with startling efficiency. Imagine walking through the labyrinthine corridors of a Minoan palace 2,500 years ago and hearing the gentle gurgle of fresh water flowing through walls, feeding ornate fountains and even flushing toilets, luxuries Europe wouldn't rediscover for another 2 millennia. This wasn't just plumbing, it was a declaration that even on an island where rain was fickle, civilization could flourish. What made these pipes revolutionary wasn't just their functionality, it was their foresight. The Minoans didn't wait for thirst to drive innovation. They built their water networks proactively, integrating them into the very bones of their architecture. At Phaistos, pipes coiled beneath floors like serpentine veins, ensuring cool water reached every corner of the palace. In Gurnia, terracotta conduits ran alongside staircases, invisible yet indispensable. Unlike the grand aqueducts Rome would later boast, the Minoan system was subtle, woven into daily life with quiet brilliance. And perhaps that's the most striking lesson: groundbreaking solutions don't always shout. Sometimes they whisper beneath our feet, but the pipes reveal something deeper about Minoan society. Water here wasn't just a utility, it was art. Fountains cascaded into courtyards adorned with frescoes of leaping dolphins, their basins designed to amplify the sound of flowing water like natural music. Ritual baths doubled as sacred spaces, where the act of cleansing blended with spiritual reverence. For the Minoans, engineering and aesthetics were inseparable, a reminder that the highest purpose of technology isn't just to serve, but to elevate. Now cross the Atlantic to a desert even more unforgiving than Crete's the Sonoran, where the Hohokam people performed their own water miracles. In what's now Arizona, they dug over 1,000 miles of canals, some wide enough to float a canoe, all with nothing but stone tools and communal labor. These weren't mere ditches, they were mathematical marvels, their gradients so precise that water flowed effortlessly across valleys and mesas. The Hohokam didn't just adapt to their environment, they rewrote its rules, turning sand into farmland so fertile it sustained cities of thousands. And like the Minoans, their genius lay in seeing what others couldn't, that in the harshest places, water isn't just found, it's forged. In the scorching heart of the Sonoran Desert, where cacti stand like silent sentinels and rain evaporates before it hits the ground, the Hohokam people performed what seemed impossible. They turned sand into sustenance. Their canal system wasn't just impressive, it was transformative, a web of waterways so vast it could stretch from Phoenix to Los Angeles if laid end to end. With nothing but stone tools and communal labor, they carved channels up to 30 feet wide and 10 feet deep, their gradients so precise that water flowed effortlessly across the landscape. Modern engineers using laser levels have found their slope calculations accurate to within inches per mile, a feat of intuition and observation that defies belief. These weren't just ditches, they were liquid highways feeding fields of maize, beans, and cotton that turned the desert into a green tapestry. What's even more astonishing is how the Hohokam adapted to their environment's cruelty. Unlike civilizations blessed with predictable rivers, they faced erratic rainfall and blistering heat. Their solution, a dual canal system, one network for regular irrigation, another for flood control, that could switch functions as needed. When rare storms sent torrents raging down dry washes, their diversion dams would channel the fury into storage basins, capturing chaos and turning it into abundance. Villages like Snaketown thrived for centuries not by conquering the desert, but by listening to it, their canals mirroring the land's natural contours like a conversation between earth and water. Yet by the mid-15th century, this hydraulic masterpiece lay silent. The Hohokam vanished, leaving behind only their ghostly canals and a mystery that still haunts archaeologists. Some point to prolonged droughts, others to salt buildup from centuries of irrigation, their very success perhaps poisoning the soil they'd worked so hard to tame. But the most poignant lesson isn't in their disappearance, it's in their resilience. For over 1,000 years, they maintained their canals through generations, a testament to communal effort and adaptability. Their legacy whispers a warning we do well to heed. Even the most ingenious systems are fragile, requiring not just brilliance to build, but wisdom to sustain. Now, journey across the Pacific to China's Taklamakan Desert, where an even older water revolution took root. Here, in one of Earth's most inhospitable places, ancient engineers devised the karez, a subterranean network that made the desert bloom. Like the Qanats of Persia, these tunnels tapped groundwater, but with a twist. They were built to outwit the Taklamakan's notorious sandstorms, their vertical shafts disguised as mere bumps in the dunes. While the Hohokam mastered surface water, the Chinese chased invisible rivers beneath the sand, proving once again that where there's ingenuity, even the driest earth can yield life. Deep in the deserts of Xinjiang, where the Taklamakan's dunes swallow entire cities and dust storms blot out the sun, an ancient water network lies hidden beneath the sand, the karez. At first glance, the landscape seems lifeless, but below the surface, a labyrinth of tunnels whispers with flowing water, sustaining oases that have flourished for over 2,000 years. Inspired by Persia's Kanats yet refined for the Taklamakan's extremes, The karez was more than just an irrigation system, it was a lifeline for Silk Road traders, a secret weapon against the desert's cruelty. Unlike open canals that would vanish under the scorching sun, these underground channels snaked invisibly, their water shielded from evaporation by layers of earth. Each vertical shaft, spaced like stitches across the dunes, served as both air vent and entry point for maintenance, their openings cleverly disguised to thwart sandstorms. The karez didn't just bring water to the surface, it outsmarted the desert itself. What made the karez truly remarkable was its role as a cultural bridge. As caravans trudged along the Silk Road, these hidden waterways became pit stops for weary travelers, their cool, clean water a treasure more valuable than silk or spice. Towns like Turpan blossomed into vibrant hubs, their vineyards and orchards fed by karez networks so extensive they could stretch for dozens of miles. The system was a testament to collaboration, often built by entire villages working in unison, with knowledge passed down through generations. But perhaps its greatest legacy was adaptability. In a land where sand could bury a well overnight, the karez endured because it wasn't just built, it was tended, repaired, and revered. Even today, as modern wells drain ancient aquifers, some karez still flow, their water a silent tribute to the ingenuity of those who refused to let the desert win. Now ascend from the dunes of Xinjiang to the dizzying heights of the Andes, where the Inca faced a water challenge even more daunting, harnessing the torrents of mountain rain and snowmelt without losing a single drop to the steep slopes below. Their solution, a terraced marvel that turned cliffs into sponges, capturing and channeling water with the precision of a master weaver. Where the karez hid beneath the sand, the Inca's systems climbed toward the sky, proving once again that humanity's oldest engineering triumphs weren't just about survival, they were about harmony. High in the Andes, where the air thins and the mountains claw at the sky, the Inca performed an agricultural miracle. They turned vertical cliffs into lush, cascading gardens. These weren't just simple terraces, they were masterclasses in hydraulic engineering, each level precisely angled to catch glacial meltwater and funnel it through a network of stone channels so efficient, not a single drop was wasted. Picture this, narrow staircases of farmland climbing thousands of feet, their retaining walls built without mortar yet strong enough to withstand earthquakes centuries later. The secret wasn't just in the stones, but in the soil layers of gravel for drainage, topped with fertile earth, creating microclimates where potatoes, quinoa, and maize thrived at altitudes that would starve most crops. What made these terraces revolutionary was how they transformed weakness into strength. On steep slopes where rain would normally wash away topsoil, the Inca channels slowed the water's descent, letting it seep gently into each level. In the thin mountain air where frost could kill plants overnight, the stone walls absorbed sunlight by day, radiating warmth back to the soil after dark like natural heaters. Even the terraces' shapes were calculated, some curved to maximize sun exposure, others staggered to minimize erosion during heavy storms. This wasn't just farming, it was alchemy, turning impossible terrain into abundance. And the proof, morae, a set of concentric terraces so precisely designed they functioned as a giant agricultural laboratory. Each level created a distinct microclimate, allowing the Inca to test crops at different temperatures, a proto-greenhouse revealing their deep understanding of ecology. Today, many of these terraces still produce food, their stonework unbroken by time, a testament to the Inca's golden rule: adapt the design to the land, never the land to the design. Now descend from the Andes to the Sahara's edge, where the Berbers faced an even more elusive challenge, harvesting water not from rivers or glaciers, but from the air itself. In Morocco's anti-Atlas Mountains, they engineered fog nets that captured mist rolling in from the Atlantic, turning vapor into rivers. Where the Inca mastered gravity, the Berbers conjured liquid from the wind, proving once again that necessity isn't just the mother of invention, it's the architect of miracles. High in Morocco's anti-Atlas mountains, where the air hangs thick with mist but rain rarely falls, the Berbers performed a kind of alchemy. They turned fog into rivers. Their secret, gigantic nets strung across mountain ridges like silent spiders' webs, each thread designed to catch droplets from the dense coastal fog rolling inland. As the mist clung to the mesh, tiny beads of water formed, growing heavier until they trickled down into gutters below. What seemed like magic was pure physics, nature's condensation process harnessed with nothing more than woven fabric and gravity. But the true brilliance lay in its simplicity. Unlike vast underground tunnels or towering aqueducts, this system required no massive labor, no complex calculations, just careful observation of the wind's patterns and the patience to listen to what the land whispered. The fog nets weren't just functional, they were democratic. In villages like Idwasksu, where wells ran dry for months, these nets provided water for everyone's schoolchildren, filled bottles at collection tanks. Women carried jugs home without walking miles to distant springs, and crops thrived in gardens that once withered under the sun. The nets leveled the playing field, proving that survival in harsh places didn't always demand grand infrastructure. Sometimes it just demanded attention. And the Berbers weren't alone. From Chile's Atacama Desert to Oman's mountaintops, similar fog catchers emerged, each adapted to local winds and terrain, a testament to how universal ingenuity can be when necessity calls. Yet the most striking lesson of the fog nets isn't their engineering, it's their humility. They remind us that the best solutions often mimic nature rather than conquer it. The nets didn't force the environment to change, they embraced its rhythms, turning a daily weather pattern into a lifeline. In a world obsessed with high-tech fixes, these silent nets whisper an alternative. Sometimes progress looks like working with what's already there. Now shift your gaze from misty peaks to the heart of desert cities, where water didn't just sustain life, it built empires. The story of urbanization in arid lands is at its core a story of hydraulic ambition. From Petra's hidden cisterns to the oasis metropolises of the Silk Road, civilizations didn't merely adapt to water scarcity. They rewrote the rules, engineering urban landscapes where none should have existed. Take Baghdad, the legendary round city of the Abbasid Caliphate, whose intricate canals transformed the Tigris-Euphrates floodplain into a medieval marvel. Or consider ancient Palmyra, whose merchants erected monumental fountains in the Syrian desert, flaunting their mastery over nature's limits. Water wasn't just a resource in these cities, it was theater, power, a declaration that even the driest earth could bow to human will. What unified these urban miracles wasn't just technology, but vision. Desert cities thrived when their planners thought beyond survival, designing water systems that enabled grandeur. The Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro, with its waterproofed bricks and precise drainage, wasn't merely functional, it was a communal jewel, a place where ritual and practicality merged. The underground Qanats feeding Persian cities like Yazd didn't just deliver water, they created microclimates, cooling homes and public squares through clever ventilation. This was engineering as artistry, where every drop served multiple purposes: drinking, cooling, inspiring. Yet the legacy of these cities also carries a warning. Many, like Yemen's Shibam, its mud towers rising from the desert, still stand only because their ancestors respected balance. They harvested just enough water to thrive, never enough to exhaust. In an age of megacities and dwindling aquifers, their stories urge us to ask, can modern urban giants learn from these ancient hydrologists? The answer might lie not in pouring more concrete, but in listening once again to the wisdom of the desert. Petra's rose-red cliffs and Timbuktu's golden mosques didn't just rise despite the desert, they flourished because of it, their very existence a defiance of nature's limits. These weren't just cities, they were hydraulic illusions, mirages made solid by human ingenuity. Take Timbuktu, that legendary Saharan crossroads where scholars once traded manuscripts under the shade of date palms. Its lifeblood was a network of wells and underground channels fed by the distant Niger River's seasonal floods, a system so reliable it turned sand into a magnet for caravans laden with salt, gold, and ideas. The city's great mosque, its wooden beams lashed together with camel leather, stood as a testament to what became possible when water was mastered not just for survival, but for the flowering of art, astronomy, and law. But perhaps no city embodied this paradox more vividly than Shibam in Yemen, its 16th-century mud towers clawing at the sky like a Manhattan of clay. In the heart of the Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter, this vertical oasis thrived thanks to an ancient dam system that captured wadi floods, channeling them through a labyrinth of palm frond-lined canals. Every drop was accounted for. Water wheel lifts hoisted liquid to rooftop gardens, while ground-level channels flushed waste away, creating a medieval sanitation system rivaling Europe's. Shibam's secret wasn't just engineering, it was communal discipline. Families maintained their stretch of canals like sacred trust, knowing that one breach could doom the entire city. Here, water wasn't merely a resource, it was social glue, binding neighbors into a shared pact against the desert. The real marvel of these cities lies in their diversity of solutions. While Petra harnessed flash floods and Shibam tamed wadis, the Khmer city of Ankara, though surrounded by monsoon forests, faced its own water crisis during dry seasons. Their answer, a vast artificial lake, the West Barre, stretching 5 miles long, its banks lined with precisely placed temples that doubled as hydrological markers. Like desert engineers, the Khmer turned water management into high art, proving that even in lush landscapes, control over liquid could define empires. This unexpected parallel reveals a universal truth. Civilization's rise hinges not on what nature provides, but on how creatively we reshape it. Now, shift from stone and mud to the realm of belief, where water transcended engineering to become something sacred. In the silence of desert nights, when the stars pressed close and the air hummed with dryness, ancient cultures didn't just see water as survival, they worshipped it as divine. The Nabateans carved altars beside their cisterns, offering prayers to Dashara, the mountain god who loosed the rains. Along the Nile, Egyptians celebrated Hapi, the androgynous deity whose annual floods brought not just fertility but cosmic order. For them, water wasn't merely a force to be controlled, it was a living mystery, a bridge between earth and heaven. This spiritual dimension reveals the deepest layer of desert wisdom. True sustainability requires reverence as much as innovation. The Garamontes didn't just maintain their foggaras, they told stories of ancestral spirits guarding the tunnels. The Hohokam's canal builders likely sang water songs passed down through generations, weaving duty into ritual. In a world where modern pipelines often distance us from water's source, these ancient practices whisper a radical idea that the best way to preserve something is to love it, to see it as sacred. Perhaps that's their most enduring lesson. The solutions that last aren't just clever but cherished. Water wasn't just a resource for desert civilizations, it was a sacred thread woven into the very fabric of their myths, rituals, and identity. Along the banks of the Ganges, where the river's flow was believed to carry the blessings of the goddess Ganga, every drop was more than liquid, it was divinity made tangible. Pilgrims still travel thousands of miles to immerse themselves in its waters, a tradition stretching back millennia, rooted in the conviction that this river could cleanse not just the body but the soul. Similarly, the Zamzam well in Mecca, said to have sprung forth at the feet of the infant Ishmael, became a cornerstone of Islamic pilgrimage. Its waters were never merely drunk, they were revered, carried across continents by faithful travelers as a sacred gift. These weren't just sources of hydration, they were portals to the divine, places where heaven and earth met. This spiritual connection wasn't just poetic, it was practical. When water is seen as holy, its care becomes a sacred duty. The stepwells of India, adorned with intricate carvings of deities, weren't just engineering marvels, they were temples where maintenance was an act of devotion. Communities didn't just repair cracks in the walls, they performed rituals to honor the water within, ensuring its purity and abundance. In the deserts of Arabia, the strict codes governing the Afflage channels weren't merely legal statutes, they were divine commandments, with penalties for hoarding or polluting water considered transgressions against both society and the gods. This reverence created a powerful incentive to preserve systems for generations, blending practicality with piety in a way modern conservation efforts often struggle to replicate. Yet for all its life-giving power, water could also be a harbinger of downfall. When droughts struck, they didn't just parch the land, they shattered the covenant between people and the divine. The Nazca, whose puquios once made the desert bloom, left behind haunting geoglyphs of spirals and waves, as if pleading with the skies for rain that never came. In Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates were worshipped as gods, a shift in their courses didn't just disrupt agriculture, it eroded faith in the rulers who claimed to mediate between heaven and earth. The collapse of the Mayas' intricate reservoir systems coincided with devastating droughts, turning their once lush cities into skeletons of stone, abandoned as the gods seemed to turn away. What's chilling about these collapses isn't just the environmental toll, it's the cultural unraveling that followed. Societies that had thrived for centuries found their myths and rituals suddenly hollow when the waters vanished. The Hohokam's canals, once bustling with life, became ghostly trenches in the sand, their builders scattered, their stories lost. Water scarcity didn't just dry up wells, it evaporated trust, fractured communities, and left behind silence where there had once been hymns to rivers and rain. This duality, water as both creator and destroyer, reveals the fragile balance these civilizations walked, where the line between survival and oblivion was as thin as a morning dew. Now consider the modern parallels. Today's megacities from Cape Town to Chennai face their own day zero crises, their reservoirs shrinking as populations swell. But unlike the ancients, many of us have lost the language of reverence that once bound communities to their water sources. Pipes and pumps hide the origins of what flows from our taps, turning miracles into commodities. The lesson from these desert civilizations isn't just about engineering. It's about remembering that water's true power lies not just in what it sustains, but in what it means. When we see it as sacred, we defend it fiercely. When we forget, we risk repeating history's hardest lesson, that no civilization, no matter how advanced, is immune to the desert's whisper. Even the most brilliant water systems carried a hidden fragility, a lesson etched into the ruins of civilizations like the Hohokam and Anasazi. The Hohokam's vast canal network, stretching over 1,000 miles through Arizona's Sonoran Desert, didn't collapse overnight. Centuries of meticulous maintenance kept it alive until the delicate balance finally broke. Some scholars point to prolonged droughts that starved their reservoirs. Others blame the slow poisoning of their fields by salt buildup, a side effect of irrigating in arid lands. With each harvest, minerals from the water accumulated in the soil until crops could no longer grow. The very system that fed them may have sown the seeds of their downfall. The Anasazi, masters of the American Southwest's cliffs and canyons, faced a similar reckoning. Their intricate check dams and rainwater catchments sustained thriving villages like Mesa Verde until the rain stopped coming. Tree rings tell a grim story: 50 years of unrelenting drought in the late 13th century, a climatic shift so severe it turned their carefully managed landscapes to dust. But climate alone didn't doom them. Archaeologists find evidence of social unraveling: burned granaries, fortified settlements suggesting that as water vanished, so did trust. When cooperation fractured, survival became impossible. These collapses weren't failures of engineering, but of adaptation. The Hohokam and Anasazi thrived for centuries because they listened to their environment, yet even their wisdom had limits. They couldn't foresee multi-generational droughts or predict how irrigation would alter their soil chemistry over time. Their stories echo a warning we do well to heed: no system, no matter how advanced, is immune to the unexpected. Today, we face eerily similar challenges. Modern reservoirs like Lake Mead, which supplies water to millions in the American Southwest, are shrinking at alarming rates. Ancient aquifers, once thought inexhaustible, are being drained faster than they can recharge. The difference: we have the benefit of hindsight and the tools to act before it's too late. Unlike the Hohokam's salt-laden fields, we can develop precision agriculture to minimize water waste. Unlike the Anasazi's drought-stricken crops, we have drought-resistant seeds and climate models to anticipate dry spells. Yet technology alone won't save us. The true lesson from these ancient civilizations isn't about pipes or pumps, it's about perspective. The Hohokam and Anasazi treated water as a shared responsibility, not a commodity. Their systems worked because communities maintained them together, generation after generation. That's the wisdom we need now, to see water not as a resource to exploit, but as a legacy to protect. The desert's old whispers are growing louder. The question is whether we're listening. Today's towering desalination plants and sprawling pipeline networks represent the pinnacle of modern engineering, yet they guzzle energy at staggering rates, with some facilities consuming as much electricity as small cities. Meanwhile, the Qanats of Persia and Afflage of Oman operated for millennia without a single watt of power, their gentle slopes guiding water purely through gravity's quiet pull. This contrast reveals a profound irony. Our most advanced solutions often create new problems, while ancient systems worked in harmony with nature's rhythms. But what if the path forward isn't about choosing between old and new, but weaving them together? Take the desert city of Yazd, where centuries-old Kanats still snake beneath the streets, their cool tunnels now supplemented by solar-powered pumps that boost flow during peak demand. Or consider Oman's Afflage, where traditional water-sharing laws have been digitized, with sensors monitoring flow rates to prevent disputes, honoring ancient equity with modern precision. These aren't nostalgic holdovers, they're hybrid systems proving that sustainability thrives when innovation respects legacy. The real pioneers, though, are often local communities quietly reviving ancient practices. In Peru's Andes, farmers have resurrected pre-Incan waru raised planting beds flanked by water channels that regulate temperature and moisture. During floods, the beds stay dry. During droughts, the channels release stored water like a time-release capsule. Scientists measuring these fields found they outyield conventional farms by 30% while using half the water. Similarly, in Rajasthan, villagers have restored forgotten Johad's earthen dams that capture monsoon rains, recharging aquifers and reviving rivers once thought lost to drought. What unites these modern keepers of ancient wisdom isn't just technique, it's philosophy. Where megaprojects often seek to dominate nature, traditional methods aim to collaborate. Fog catchers in Morocco's anti-atlas now use high-tech polymer meshes instead of woven reeds, but still follow wind patterns mapped by generations of Berber shepherds. California's vineyards, parched by droughts, are adopting dry farming techniques perfected by Greek and Roman growers 2,000 years ago, training roots to seek deeper moisture rather than relying on wasteful irrigation. The lesson isn't that technology has failed us, but that the best solutions are time travelers blending ancestral insight with cutting-edge tools. Dutch engineers studying the floating gardens of Bangladesh's Basin discovered their natural flood resistance could inspire amphibious housing for coastal cities. Arizona's desert cities are experimenting with ceramic water coolers modeled after Mesopotamian pots that kept water chilled through evaporation, reducing reliance on energy-hungry refrigerators. Perhaps the most telling example comes from Cape Town, where Day Zero water shortages forced a reckoning. Alongside drilling new wells, the city turned to an unexpected ally: rooftop rain chains, a technique borrowed from Japanese Edo period architecture. These decorative downspouts slow rainwater's descent, allowing more to be harvested, a small touch with outsized impact. It's a reminder that solving tomorrow's crises might mean rediscovering what we've forgotten, then reimagining it for a changing world. In the remote mountain villages of Oman, where the afternoon sun turns wadis into shimmering mirages, elderly men still gather at the Afflage channels, their hands calloused from decades of clearing silt from the ancient waterways. They move with practiced precision, knowing each curve and contour of the stone-lined channels as if they were extensions of their own bodies. This isn't just maintenance, it's a ritual, a dialogue with ancestors who first carved these lifelines into the earth over 2,000 years ago. The Afflage caretakers, known as wackels, don't just repair cracks, they recite water distribution schedules from memory, allocating shares to families based on traditions older than the Quran. Their wisdom, passed down orally through generations, holds something modern hydrology often overlooks: an intimate understanding of how water shapes not just land but community. Meanwhile, in the high deserts of Peru, farmers still kneel beside puquios, their fingers tracing the spiral stones that mark these sacred wells. Unlike the Afflage communal channels, the puquios are solitary sentinels, their underground veins tapping aquifers so deep they're shielded from drought. The locals speak of them in whispers, as if the wells themselves are listening. The puquios are alive, one farmer tells me, his voice steady despite the cracking wind. They breathe when the earth shifts, and we must listen. Here, maintenance isn't scheduled, it's intuitive, guided by dreams and the subtle sinking of stones that signal a tunnel needs repair. These farmers aren't just technicians, they are interpreters of a language written in groundwater and sediment. Then there's Iran's Qanat masters, the Muqanis, who navigate the hidden labyrinths beneath cities like Yazd with nothing but rope ladders and flickering lanterns. Their apprenticeship begins in childhood, learning to distinguish the scent of damp earth that signals a seepage leak from the musty odor of collapse. In a world obsessed with drones and satellite mapping, these men still use age-old tricks, holding a feather to detect air currents in tunnels, or tasting soil to gauge its water content. The Kanat teaches patience, one Muqani explains, his face etched with lines like the channels he maintains. You cannot rush it, just as you cannot rush a wound to heal. What unites these custodians across continents isn't just their tools or techniques, it's their role as living libraries. When a wakil in Oman recites a water-sharing poem from the 10th century, or a Peruvian elder describes how the puquio's spirals mimic celestial patterns, they're preserving more than infrastructure. They're safeguarding a worldview where water isn't a commodity but a covenant, Archaeologists now work alongside these guardians, not just to document their methods, but to decode the philosophy behind them. That sustainability isn't a calculation, but a relationship. Yet time is thinning their ranks. Younger generations, lured by city jobs and smartphones, often leave the tunnels and channels to silence. In Yazd, only 17 Mukanis remain, their knowledge teetering on the edge of extinction. The irony is crushing. Just as climate change makes these ancient systems more relevant than ever, their human encyclopedias are vanishing. This urgency drives archaeologists like Dr. Amina Al-Hadi, who spends her days mapping Afflage with 3D scanners while shadowing wackels. "We're not just recording stone," she says, brushing dust from a sensor. "We're capturing a way of thinking how to thrive in scarcity without exploitation." Her team's discoveries reveal startling sophistication. Sections of Afflage engineered to slow water flow during droughts, or puquios positioned along seismic faults to harness natural filtration. These aren't relics, they're time-tested blueprints for resilience. The real breakthrough, though, lies in merging these insights with modern tools. In Oman, engineers are pairing Afflage flow data with AI to predict droughts, while in Peru, drones help locate collapsed puquios tunnels invisible from the surface. The goal isn't to replace tradition, but to amplify it, giving ancient wisdom new voices. As one young Mukani apprentice in Iran told me, gripping his grandfather's worn pickaxe, "The Kanat dug our past. Now it must dig our future." Now, imagine standing at the edge of a dig site in Jordan's Wadi Rum, where archaeologists brush away sand to reveal a Nabatean cistern no one has touched for millennia. The thrill isn't just in the discovery, it's in the realization that every shard of pottery, every chisel mark, holds clues to how civilizations outsmarted the desert. High above the deserts of Iran, satellites silently scan the earth, their cameras capturing more than just sand and rock. Hidden beneath the surface, the ghostly outlines of ancient Qanats appear, buried waterways invisible to the naked eye, now revealed by infrared imaging and radar. These aren't just archaeological curiosities, they're blueprints for resilience waiting to be rediscovered. Modern technology, from ground-penetrating radar to drone-mounted lidar, is peeling back the desert's layers like pages of a forgotten manuscript, exposing networks of tunnels, cisterns, and canals that once turned wastelands into breadbaskets. In Jordan's Wadi Fainan, thermal imaging recently uncovered a Nabatean dam system so vast it rewrote assumptions about their hydraulic prowess. And in Cambodia, laser scans pierced the jungle canopy to expose Angkor's sprawling water grid, a medieval metropolis engineered to dance with monsoons. But the real revelation isn't just what these tools find, it's how they're changing the conversation. For decades, archaeologists relied on shovels and guesswork, piecing together fragments of the past. Now they're assembling entire hydrological maps with pixel-perfect precision. Take the work of Dr. Jason at Harvard, who used declassified Cold War spy satellite images to trace Mesopotamia's lost canals. The images, taken in the 1960s, showed faint crop marks and soil discolorations, clues to waterways erased by centuries of wind and war. By overlaying these with drone surveys, his team reconstructed irrigation systems that fed the world's first cities. It's like watching a palimpsest emerge under blacklight, where every erased line tells a story. Yet the most exciting discoveries aren't just rewriting history, they're inspiring solutions for tomorrow. In Peru, archaeologists using 3D modeling to study ancient puquios noticed something startling. The spiral-shaped wells acted as natural air vents, creating convection currents that prevented stagnation. Engineers in Lima are now adapting this design for modern wells in slums, where contaminated water kills thousands yearly. Similarly, Rajasthan's revived Johad's earthen dams modeled on thousand-year-old designs have replenished aquifers in villages once written off as doomed. The past isn't just a museum, it's a workshop. What makes these collaborations transformative is their humility. Instead of imposing megaprojects, scientists are listening to the land's memory. In Oman, hydrologists paired satellite data with oral histories from Afflage caretakers, discovering that certain channels were deliberately built over seismic faults, not by accident, but to harness natural filtration through fractured rock. "We thought we were mapping ruins," admits one researcher. "Turns out we were decoding a survival manual." The challenge now is scaling these insights without losing their wisdom. While drones can map a qanat in hours, it still takes a Mukani's intuition to sense a tunnel's weakness by the smell of damp earth. Satellite algorithms might predict drought patterns, but they can't replicate the communal bonds that kept Afflage flowing for millennia. The lesson: technology should illuminate tradition, not eclipse it. As climate change tightens its grip, these ancient systems offer more than nostalgia, they're proving grounds. California's vineyards, parched by droughts, are testing terraced irrigation inspired by Yemen's mountain farms. In Australia, Aboriginal fire management practices, once dismissed as primitive, are now curbing wildfires better than modern methods. The pattern is clear: the solutions we need aren't always ahead of us. Sometimes they're beneath our feet, whispering through layers of sand and time. In the drought-stricken farmlands of California's Central Valley, where reservoirs shrink to cracked mud and wells run dry, engineers are turning to an unexpected ally: the past. Beneath almond orchards and vineyards, they're testing a modern twist on ancient Qanats, underground infiltration galleries that mimic the Persian tunnels, capturing excess floodwater during rare storms and storing it in aquifers instead of letting it evaporate under the scorching sun. Meanwhile, along the fog-drenched cliffs of Big Sur, mesh nets inspired by Morocco's Berber design stretch toward the sky, harvesting thousands of gallons a day from coastal mist, water that once vanished into the air now filling irrigation tanks for organic farms. These aren't just experiments, they're revolutions disguised as homecomings, proving that the answers to our most pressing crises might have been here all along. Australia's outback tells a similar story. In the red heart of the continent, where temperatures soar past 120 degrees and rivers vanish for years at a time, Aboriginal rangers are reviving an ancient practice called water dreaming, reading the land for hidden moisture like their ancestors did. By observing which trees retain green leaves longest in drought or where ants build mounds over subterranean springs, they've pinpointed forgotten water sources beneath the sand. Government hydrologists, armed with satellite data, initially scoffed until their drills struck water exactly where the rangers predicted. Now, these time-tested methods are being woven into modern drought plans, blending 30,000 years of observation with 21st-century tools. Yet embracing these old-new solutions requires confronting stubborn myths. Hollywood paints desert civilizations as either doomed or primitive. Think crumbling temples buried by dunes or chariot battles over the last muddy puddle. The truth: these societies were anything but victims of their environment. The Nabateans didn't just endure the desert, they engineered it, turning flash floods into prosperity. The Hohokam's canals weren't crude ditches, they were mathematical marvels with gradients precise to inches per mile. And far from being isolated, these cultures traded water wisdom across continents. Persian Kanat builders likely influenced Roman aqueducts, while Andean terrace designs echo techniques from Southeast Asia. The most damaging myth of all, that ancient methods are too simplistic for modern scales. Tell that to the engineers in Lima, Peru, where a revived Inca Amuna system, stone channels that slow meltwater's descent down mountains, now recharges aquifers for 2 million people. Or to the farmers in Rajasthan, where restored Johad reservoirs have brought back rivers declared dead decades ago. These systems weren't primitive stopgaps, they were sophisticated adaptations refined over centuries, designed to work with nature's rhythms rather than override them. Perhaps the deepest lesson lies in perspective, where modern engineering often seeks to dominate damming rivers, draining aquifers, ancient systems aimed for equilibrium. The Afflage channels of Oman allocated water shares not by wealth or power, but by need. The Nazca puquios were maintained communally, with families passing down repair skills like sacred trusts. In an era of privatization and scarcity fears, this ethos feels radical. Water as common heritage, not commodity. As California's fog nets glisten with morning dew and Australia's desert ranges trace ancestral water songs in the sand, something profound becomes clear. The desert's old masters left more than ruins, they left roadmaps. Not rigid blueprints to copy, but principles to adapt. Observe first, build gently, share always. The future of water may not lie in reinventing the wheel, but in remembering how it once turned. The notion that ancient civilizations were primitive collapses like a sandcastle against the tide when you examine their water systems. These were not the haphazard ditches or crude wells of popular imagination. They were feats of precision engineering that would make modern hydrologists pause. Consider the Qanats of Persia, where builders hand-dug tunnels with gradients accurate to within a fraction of an inch per mile, ensuring water flowed effortlessly across dozens of miles without a single pump. Or the Hohokam canals in Arizona, their alignment so exact that laser surveys today confirm their slopes deviate less than modern concrete aqueducts. This wasn't guesswork, it was geometry carved into the earth with nothing but ropes, plumb bobs, and generations of observation. Scale alone would shatter the myth of primitiveness. The Nabateans' reservoir network at Petra could hold over 40 million gallons, enough to supply a modern city for weeks. Ankar's West Barre, an artificial lake stretching 5 miles, required moving more earth than the Great Pyramid of Giza. And let's not forget the 1,000 miles of Hohokam canals, a project so vast it would eclipse many interstate highway systems. These weren't tribal survival tactics, they were metropolitan-scale infrastructures supporting populations rivaling medieval European capitals. But the real clincher is adaptability. Ancient engineers didn't just build for their era, they anticipated change. The Afflage of Oman included fail-safes like secondary channels to redirect silt during floods, while the Inca's terraces were designed to shift with seismic activity. Compare that to modern Los Angeles, where a single earthquake can cripple water supplies for millions. The ancients didn't have satellites or computer models, yet their systems endured centuries longer than our concrete megastructures. That's not primitive, that's mastery. Now, shift from admiration to introspection. If these civilizations achieved so much with so little, why do we, armed with drones and AI, still face water crises they never did? The answer lies not in technology, but in ethics. Where modern laws treat water as a commodity, the Afflage caretakers of Oman allocated it by family need, not wealth. The Nazca maintained puquios as communal trusts, while today's aquifers are drained by private corporations. Ancient systems thrived because they balanced human use with ecological respect, a lesson we've unlearned at our peril. The most humbling realization: these primitive cultures understood something we're only now rediscovering. Sustainability isn't just about pipes and pumps, but about values. When the Garamontes dug foggaras across the Sahara, they didn't ask how much water they could extract, they asked how much the land could spare. That shift in perspective, more than any engineering marvel, might be their greatest legacy to a world finally learning that dominance over nature is a dead end. In the quiet villages of Oman, where the desert heat shimmers above ancient stone channels, the Afflage system still operates on a principle that feels almost radical today: water as a shared inheritance, not a commodity. For over 2,000 years, these channels have flowed under strict laws ensuring every family, whether wealthy or struggling, receives a timed share of water measured by the shadows of date palms or the drip of clay jars. No hoarding, no waste, just an unbroken covenant between community and resource. This wasn't mere tradition. It was a recognition that survival in harsh lands demanded something deeper than engineering. It demanded fairness. Fast forward to the present, where bottled water corporations drain aquifers for profit, and droughts leave entire neighborhoods without tap water, while golf courses glisten green in the desert. The contrast couldn't be starker. Ancient systems like the Afflage or the Nazca's Puquios were governed by collective responsibility, with penalties for hoarding so severe they were etched into religious texts and oral laws. The Garamontes of the Sahara even designed their foggara tunnels to bypass elite enclaves, ensuring water reached farmers and herders first. These weren't utopian ideals, they were pragmatic necessities forged in the crucible of scarcity. Yet today, as climate change tightens its grip, the ethics of water distribution are more fractured than ever. In Chile's privatized rivers, where water rights are traded like stocks, vineyards flourish while indigenous Mapuche communities haul buckets from contaminated wells. In California's Central Valley, corporate farms drill deeper wells, leaving small homesteads with dust. The ancient world's insistence on equity wasn't just noble, it was prophetic. Their systems whisper a question we've stopped asking: who gets to drink and who decides? But there's hope in the echoes of these old models. In Rajasthan, India, villagers revived the Johad system, medieval rainwater catchments, not just to replenish groundwater, but to reinstate communal water councils that had vanished under colonial rule. In Bolivia, after violent protests against water privatization, the government restored indigenous management of mountain springs, mirroring the Incas' reverence for communal sources. These aren't just technical fixes, they're cultural reckonings, a return to the idea that water belongs to no one, and therefore to everyone. The future of desert water tech might lie in fusion, not just of old and new tools, but of old and new values. Solar-powered desalination plants in Morocco now pair with revitalized fog nets, while Arizona's engineers study Hohokam canal gradients to reduce urban water loss. But the real innovation, policies that honor the past's equity. In Oman, some afflage are now monitored by AI, yet the water shares remain allocated by ancestral codes. In Peru, Puquios maintenance is taught in schools alongside coding, ensuring the next generation sees tradition as progress. What emerges isn't a rejection of modernity, but a recalibration. The desert's old masters didn't just engineer water, they engineered society around it. Their legacy isn't in the stones they carved, but in the choices they made: to share, to sustain, to see water not as a prize to be won, but as a rhythm to be joined. As we stand on the brink of a thirsty future, their whispers grow louder, urging us to build not just smarter systems but fairer ones. Now, the horizon beckons with new promise, where drones map ancient Qanats while algorithms predict droughts, and where the wisdom of the past meets the tools of tomorrow. The next chapter of desert water tech isn't just about innovation, it's about remembering what we've forgotten. 21st century water innovation might seem light years ahead of ancient Canats and Stepwells, but look closer, you'll find the same principles reborn in startling new forms. Take biomimicry. Engineers are now designing fog harvesting meshes inspired by the Namib desert beetle, whose bumpy shell condenses fog into drinkable water, just like the Berbers' nets scaled down to microscopic precision. Or consider the smart canals of Arizona, where AI algorithms adjust water flow in real time based on soil sensors, echoing the Hohokam's intuitive grasp of gradients, except now satellites and machine learning do the math. Even the humble terracotta pot, once used by Mesopotamians to cool water through evaporation, has a high-tech descendant, porous ceramic irrigation systems that release water only when crops thirst, cutting waste by 70%. The tools have changed, but the philosophy endures: work with nature, not against it. What's truly revolutionary is how these innovations scale ancient wisdom to meet modern crises. In Cape Town, where Day Zero loomed in 2018, engineers combined Dutch dike technology with an unexpected ally, the Inca's Amunas system. By diverting floodwaters into mountain infiltration galleries, they recharged aquifers just as the Andes civilizations did centuries ago. Meanwhile, in California's Central Valley, drones map groundwater reserves with LiDAR, but farmers consult digital recreations of Hohokam Canal maps to pinpoint where their ancestors found hidden flows. This isn't nostalgia, it's pragmatism. As one hydrologist put it, the ancients had millennia to test what worked. We'd be fools not to crib their notes. Yet the most transformative shift isn't technological, it's personal. Across social media, #water challenge movements urge people to track daily usage with apps modeled after Oman's Afflage water shares, turning conservation into a communal game. Schools from Rajasthan to Texas teach kids to build mini Qanats in sandboxes, blending STEM education with ancestral reverence for groundwater. Even architects are reimagining cities as sponges, with permeable pavements and rooftop gardens that mimic the Nabateans' flood-capturing cisterns, proof that the future of water isn't just in labs but in our backyards. The lesson: you don't need a degree in hydrology to honor these ancient principles. Fixing that leaky faucet saves more water than you'd haul from a stepwell in a day. Planting drought-resistant gardens echoes the Hohokam's crop choices. Even choosing reusable bottles over disposables honors the ethos of systems built to last generations, not just quarters. The desert's old masters didn't have all the answers, but they asked the right question: how do we live well within our means? Their legacy isn't locked in ruins. It flows through every mindful choice to cherish what keeps us alive. Fixing a leaky faucet might seem like a small act, but in the world of water conservation, it's a direct echo of ancient wisdom, a quiet nod to the civilizations that treated every drop as sacred. Consider this: a single dripping tap can waste over 3,000 gallons a year, enough to fill a Nabatean cistern halfway. Now imagine millions of households tightening their faucets, patching their pipes, or simply turning off the tap while brushing their teeth. Suddenly, those tiny actions ripple outward, becoming a modern-day Afflage system, a network of savings flowing invisibly beneath our daily lives. Rainwater harvesting, once the lifeblood of desert cities like Petra and Shibam, is another ancient practice making a comeback. In Austin, Texas, homeowners install simple barrel systems that channel roof runoff into gardens, mimicking the Nabateans' cliffside channels on a suburban scale. In Bangalore, architects design buildings with angled rooftops and underground tanks inspired by stepwells, capturing monsoon rains that would otherwise vanish into storm drains. These aren't just eco-friendly choices, they're time-tested survival strategies repurposed for the climate crisis. The brilliance lies in their simplicity: no high-tech gadgets, just gravity and foresight, the same tools the Hohokam used to farm the Saharan desert centuries ago. But conservation isn't limited to homes. Schools in Arizona teach kids to build mini Qanats in sandboxes, funneling water through gravel to demonstrate groundwater recharge. Restaurants in Cape Town now serve Day Zero menus featuring dishes that require minimal water to prepare, a culinary callback to the drought-resistant crops of the Anasazi. Even tech giants are joining the movement. Google's California campuses use treated wastewater for cooling towers, a closed-loop system that would make the Minoan's terracotta pipes blush with pride. Behind every drop saved are unsung heroes, people like Maria Telks, the 1940s scientist who pioneered solar stills to desalinate seawater using principles borrowed from ancient Greek sailors. Or Rajendra Singh, the waterman of India, who revived Rajasthan's Johads and brought rivers back from the dead by listening to elders' stories about forgotten rains. These modern water warriors prove that innovation isn't always about inventing something new. Sometimes it's about remembering what worked, so the next time you opt for a shorter shower or plant a drought-resistant garden, know this: you're not just cutting your water bill. You're joining a lineage of problem solvers who turned scarcity into abundance long before the word sustainability existed. The desert's old masters didn't have all the answers, but they left us a compass, one that points not just to the past, but to a future where every drop tells a story. Beneath the towering arches of Petra's aqueducts and the spiraling depths of India's Stepwells, the true architects of these marvels remain unnamed, their hands calloused from carving stone, their backs bent under the desert sun. These weren't just laborers, they were mathematicians calculating gradients by instinct, hydrologists reading the earth's whispers, and artisans shaping water into art. Consider the Qanat diggers of Persia, who spent lifetimes tunneling through bedrock with nothing but picks and lanterns, passing down tricks like tasting soil to gauge moisture or listening for echoes to detect hollow spaces. Their knowledge wasn't written in textbooks but etched into muscle memory and oral tradition, a living library lost to time. Then there were the women of Rajasthan, whose daily walks to Stepwells doubled as quality inspections, noticing cracks in the mortar, adjusting flow rates by shifting stones, their expertise woven into the rhythm of communal life. Or the enslaved workers who built Rome's aqueducts, their ingenuity overshadowed by emperors claiming credit. History remembers the pharaohs and kings, but the pyramids of water engineering, the cisterns, canals, and fog nets were raised by ordinary hands. Their legacy isn't just in the structures that survive, but in the ethos they embodied. That collaboration, not conquest, turns scarcity into abundance. Today, as we marvel at these ancient systems, we face an uncomfortable truth. Our modern water crises aren't just failures of technology, they're failures of memory. We've forgotten how to see water as those diggers and menders did, not as a resource to exploit, but as a relationship to nurture. The Garamontes foggara tunnels required constant care, with entire villages descending into the dark to clear silt, not for pay, but because survival depended on it. The Hohokam's canal networks demanded shared labor, with farmers trading shifts to maintain channels that fed all equally. These weren't just engineering feats, they were social contracts, binding communities to water and to each other. So here's the question that lingers like a shadow in these ancient tunnels. What if the real marvel wasn't the Kanat or the Stepwell, but the culture that built them? A culture where water was too precious to privatize, where innovation sprang from necessity rather than profit, where no one drank unless everyone could. As climate change tightens its grip, their greatest lesson isn't about stone or soil. It's about solidarity. Chinese letter I, and the quiet villages of Oman, where the desert heat shimmers above ancient stone channels. The Afflage system still operates on a principle that feels almost radical today: water as a shared inheritance, not a commodity. For over 2,000 years, these channels have flowed under strict laws ensuring every family, whether wealthy or struggling, receives a timed share of water measured by the shadows of date palms or the drip of clay jars. No hoarding, no waste, just an unbroken covenant between community and resource. This wasn't mere tradition, it was a recognition that survival in harsh lands demanded something deeper than engineering. It demanded fairness. Fast forward to the present, where bottled water corporations drain aquifers for profit, and droughts leave entire neighborhoods without tap water, while golf courses glisten green in the desert. The contrast couldn't be starker. Ancient systems like the Afflage or the Nazca's puquios were governed by collective responsibility, with penalties for hoarding so severe they were etched into religious texts and oral laws. The Garamontes of the Sahara even designed their foggara tunnels to bypass elite enclaves, ensuring water reached farmers and herders first. These weren't utopian ideals, they were pragmatic necessities forged in the crucible of scarcity. Yet today, as climate change tightens its grip, the ethics of water distribution are more fractured than ever. In Chile's privatized rivers, where water rights are traded like stocks, vineyards flourish while indigenous Mapuche communities haul buckets from contaminated wells. In California's Central Valley, corporate farms drill deeper wells, leaving small homesteads with dust. The ancient world's insistence on equity wasn't just noble, it was prophetic. Their systems whisper a question we've stopped asking: who gets to drink and who decides? But there's hope in the echoes of these old models. In Rajasthan, India, villagers revived the Johad system, medieval rainwater catchments, not just to replenish groundwater, but to reinstate communal water councils that had vanished under colonial rule. In Bolivia, after violent protests against water privatization, the government restored indigenous management of mountain springs, mirroring the Incas' reverence for communal sources. These aren't just technical fixes, they're cultural reckonings, a return to the idea that water belongs to no one, and therefore to everyone. The future of desert water tech might lie in fusion, not just of old and new tools, but of old and new values. Solar-powered desalination plants in Morocco now pair with revitalized fog nets, while Arizona's engineers study Hohokam canal gradients to reduce urban water loss. But the real innovation, policies that honor the past's equity. In Oman, some aflaj are now monitored by AI, yet the water shares remain allocated by ancestral codes. In Peru, puquios maintenance is taught in schools alongside coding, ensuring the next generation sees tradition as progress. What emerges isn't a rejection of modernity, but a recalibration. The desert's old masters didn't just engineer water, they engineered society around it. Their legacy isn't in the stones they carved, but in the choices they made, to share, to sustain, to see water not as a prize to be won, but as a rhythm to be joined. As we stand on the brink of a thirsty future, their whispers grow louder, urging us to build not just smarter systems but fairer ones. Now the horizon beckons with new promise, where drones map ancient Qanats while algorithms predict droughts, and where the wisdom of the past meets the tools of tomorrow. The next chapter of desert water tech isn't just about innovation, it's about remembering what we've forgotten. Imagine a world where the last Kanat digger lays down his tools, his calloused hands finally still, taking centuries of underground wisdom with him. Or a village where no one remembers the songs that once guided the repair of Afflage channels, leaving the ancient waterways to crumble into silence. This isn't just about losing history, it's about discarding a lifeline we might need sooner than we think. As climate change intensifies and water scarcity spreads, the very solutions that sustained civilizations for millennia are vanishing faster than we can document them. In Iran, only a handful of elderly muqannis remain who can navigate the labyrinthine Qanats by memory. In Oman, the intricate laws governing Afflage water shares exist mostly in fading oral traditions, recited by elders whose children have moved to cities. These systems aren't relics, they're time-tested blueprints for resilience, and once they're gone, we can't simply invent them anew. The stakes couldn't be higher. Modern engineering excels at brute force solutions, massive dams, energy-guzzling desalination plants, but often fails where ancient systems thrived: sustainability. When Cape Town faced day zero, it wasn't just pipelines that saved the city, it was resurrected rainwater harvesting techniques borrowed from indigenous practices. Similarly, when Arizona's groundwater dwindles, farmers are turning to satellite-mapped Hohokam Canal routes to locate forgotten flows. These aren't backup plans, they're becoming primary survival strategies. Yet every time a fog net caretaker in Morocco passes without an apprentice or a Peruvian puquio master's knowledge fades unrecorded, we lose irreplaceable adaptations to droughts, floods, and scarcity. But here's the hopeful twist: saving this knowledge doesn't require abandoning progress. In Yazd, young engineers now pair drones with muqanni lore to map Kanat routes, merging ancestral intuition with lidar precision. Universities from Tucson to Tokyo are creating living libraries, where elders teach students to read soil moisture like a language or sense aquifer shifts through subtle land vibrations. Even tech giants are listening. Google's AI team recently partnered with Berber fog harvesters to optimize net designs using millennia of wind pattern observations. The goal isn't museum piece preservation, it's dynamic reinvention. The deeper lesson lies beyond technology. These ancient systems worked because they were rooted in shared responsibility, an ethos we've often lost. The Garamontes didn't maintain their foggaras for personal gain, but because survival meant collective care. The Hohokam's canals demanded cooperative labor, not corporate control. As we face a future of fiercer droughts and dwindling reservoirs, their greatest legacy isn't just in stone or soil, but in the radical idea that water belongs to everyone. The choice ahead isn't between past and future. It's about weaving the wisdom of those who thrived in scarcity with the tools of those who dream of abundance. The desert's old whispers aren't just echoes, they're a compass pointing toward a way forward that's as much about community as it is about innovation. Scarcity has always been the mother of invention, but nowhere is this truth more vividly illustrated than in the deserts of our world. These harsh landscapes, where every drop of water must be earned through sweat and ingenuity, became unlikely cradles of civilization precisely because they demanded creative solutions. The ancient Nabateans didn't just endure the desert, they transformed flash floods into prosperity. The Hohokam didn't merely survive drought, they engineered canals with mathematical precision to make the sand bloom. These weren't acts of desperation, but of profound imagination, proof that when resources dwindle, human creativity expands to fill the void. What makes these desert civilizations truly remarkable isn't just what they built, but how they thought. Faced with environments that would paralyze others, they developed a mindset we might call scarcity intelligence, the ability to see potential where others saw only lack. The Berber fog catchers didn't lament the absence of rivers, they harvested water from thin air. The Persian Kanat builders didn't fight the desert's dryness, they tapped into hidden mountain springs through miles of underground tunnels. This way of thinking, resourceful, observant, deeply attuned to nature's subtle gifts, may be their most valuable legacy to our climate-challenged world. Modern environmentalists talk about circular systems where waste becomes input, but desert cultures mastered this concept millennia ago. In Shibam's mud towers, every drop of water served multiple purposes: drinking, cooling, irrigating rooftop gardens, then flushing waste through ingenious sanitation channels. The Incas' terraces didn't just grow food, they created microclimates, prevented erosion, and stored water like giant sponges. Nothing was single-use, everything interconnected. Today, as we grapple with linear systems that extract, consume, and discard, these ancient models offer a radical alternative: economies that mimic nature's loops rather than exploit them. Perhaps the most striking parallel between then and now lies in social organization. Desert civilizations understood that surviving scarcity required more than technology, it demanded cooperation. The Afflage channels of Oman operated on strict water-sharing laws because hoarding meant collective ruin. The Hohokam's canal maintenance wasn't assigned to specialists but shared among all farmers, creating a web of mutual responsibility. In an era when climate change pits communities against each other for dwindling resources, these models suggest a different path. That fairness isn't just ethical, but essential for long-term survival. The true test of these ancient lessons comes not in admiring them, but in applying their principles to modern crises. California's wildfires might be mitigated by reviving indigenous fire management practices that once kept forests healthy. Bengaluru's water shortages could find relief in the Stepwell-inspired rainwater harvesting systems now being retrofitted into office towers. Even massive desalination plants might borrow from the Minoan's terracotta pipe designs to reduce energy use. The solutions won't be identical, our challenges are more complex, but the mindset remains shockingly relevant. Observe closely, innovate humbly, and remember that nature's constraints often conceal its greatest gifts. What ultimately connects us to these desert ancestors isn't just shared challenges, but shared humanity. When a Mukani in Iran descends into a Kanat, his hands reading the tunnel walls like braille, he's not so different from a modern hydrologist interpreting satellite data. The Berber grandmother teaching children to weave fog nets employs the same patient pedagogy as a climate scientist mentoring graduate students. Across centuries, the essential act remains passing down hard-won knowledge so others may drink, grow, and endure. As rising temperatures expand the world's drylands and water crises multiply, we stand at a crossroads. We can cling to extractive systems until they break, or we can learn from those who thrived in scarcity by working with nature's limits rather than against them. The desert's message is clear: adversity need not diminish us, it can reveal our capacity to adapt, cooperate, and reimagine what's possible. Their stones still whisper with solutions. Our task is to listen before the wind erases them completely. From the winding Qanats of Persia to the towering Stepwells of India, these ancient water systems reveal something profound about human resilience, not just the ability to endure hardship, but to transform it into opportunity. The desert's greatest lesson isn't found in the stones of these structures, but in the mindset behind them, a relentless curiosity that saw potential where others saw only scarcity. When the Nabateans channeled flash floods into cisterns, or the Berbers wove fog into rivers, they weren't just solving problems, they were redefining what was possible. Today, as climate change turns once fertile regions arid and water wars loom on the horizon, their ingenuity feels less like history and more like prophecy. Consider the paradox of our modern world. We have satellites to monitor droughts, yet California's reservoirs sit half empty. We engineer billion-dollar desalination plants, while ancient puquios still nourish Peruvian farms without a watt of electricity. The disconnect isn't technological, it's philosophical. Where ancient systems worked with nature's rhythms, we've too often tried to overpower them, but the tide is turning. From Arizona's solar-powered Kanat-inspired aquifers to Mumbai's Stepwell-inspired rainwater parks, a quiet revolution is underway, one that stitches ancestral wisdom into the fabric of modern innovation. Farmers in Spain's arid Almeria region now blend Roman irrigation techniques with soil sensors, doubling yields while using half the water. Architects in Dubai study wind towers from Persia's deserts to design skyscrapers that cool themselves without AC. These aren't retro fantasies, they're proof that the past holds blueprints for our survival. The most vital lesson, though, lies beyond engineering. Ancient water systems thrived because they were rooted in something deeper than technology: community. The Afflage channels of Oman didn't just deliver water, they wove villages together through shared labor and sacred responsibility. When the Hohokam maintained their canals, they weren't just digging ditches, they were reinforcing a pact between generations. In an age of privatization and scarcity anxiety, their example shines brighter than ever. Water is a covenant, not a commodity. So as you turn off the tap while brushing your teeth, or plant a drought-resistant garden, remember, you're part of this unbroken lineage. Every drop saved honors the Mukanis who tunneled through bedrock, the women who carried jars from stepwells, the unnamed engineers who turned deserts into gardens. Their legacy isn't locked in ruins, it flows through our choices today. If this journey through humanity's oldest survival manual sparked your curiosity, pay it forward. Share this video with someone who believes solutions must always be high-tech or expensive. Drop a comment about the ancient innovation that amazed you most. And hit subscribe because the next chapter of water wisdom is being written now by all of us. Together, let's ensure the wells of knowledge never